Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Okay, I know it's been a minute, but that's neither here nor there. We are not going to talk about it. It's okay. We all fall off the wagon sometimes, and I fell off the booktube wagon. But here we are, we're back for my favorite video of the year, which is the mid-year book freakout tag video. I knew I had to come back and do this because it is my favorite video to watch. It was my favorite video to make last year, and it's been my favorite video to make so far this year of the 3 that I have made. But again, we're not talking about it. If you don't know, this tag is 13 questions about the books that you've read so far in the first half of the year. So let's just jump into it. The first question is the best book you've read so far in 2023. The answer to this is actually an answer from one of the questions last year. What do you have to get to by the end of the year? I did not get to it in 2022, but I did finally pick it up and finish it in 2023, and that is Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. This book is just amazing, as I knew it would be. Last year was really embarrassing. I think I read like 90% of it and then put it down and never picked it back up. So I knew when I finally did reread it, I was going to have to start back at the beginning. So I finally did that a few months ago, and this book absolutely delivered on everything it promised. I loved Andy Weir. The Martian by him is one of my absolute favorite books of all times, and this is no exception. It was right up there. It's amazing. It deserves all the hype that it got last year. I saw this as so many people's #1 favorite book of 2022, and I'm not surprised. Andy Weir just has the perfect way to do this like beginner sci-fi, but it's not so beginner that it feels really dumbed down. You have to focus, you have to pay attention because there's a lot of information going on. But it is doable for somebody who is sort of just getting into sci-fi. I loved everything about this. I love the world, I love the characters, I love the adventure, I love how fleshed out it was. It is a long book. I think it's approaching like 500-ish pages, so it is long, but you get a lot of information. The story is very fleshed out, and the ending was just awesome. I loved it. I cried a little bit. It was great. It was perfect. 5 stars for me, 100%. My favorite book so far this year. All right, question number 2 is the best sequel you've read so far in 2023. If you've watched any of my other videos, you know that I don't really read series books, but I have found myself loving 2 different series, and I've only read 3 sequels so far this year. 2 from one series, 1 from another. So my favorite one that I've read this year is Rogue Protocol by Martha Wells, which is in the Murderbot series. It's difficult to describe this without having read it. It's a dystopian future. It's very, very, very heavy sci-fi, but they're very short books. They're like 130 pages. They follow this robot in this like crazy distant future that is essentially just a soldier robot. He is designed to protect his clients and kill for them, essentially, which is why he is called Murderbot. He just has the greatest personality. I love this character. I love this series. I'm a little sad because the other sequel that I read is the 3rd installment in the Finlay Donovan series, and I love this series so much, but the 3rd one was a little lacking for me. I do think some of that could be because I am reading them at the pace with which they are released. So I'm getting like a year between books. So I'm kind of forgetting details. It's hard to jump back into the story. I think if maybe I read them all back to back, I would have liked the 3rd one more. But so far, the 3rd installment in Finlay Donovan has not been my favorite. But yeah, if you have any interest in like a heavier hitting sci-fi with a lot of humor, a little bit of exploration of the human condition from like a robot's point of view, check out the Murderbot series from Martha Wells. It is awesome. I think there are 5 or 6 installments. I've read 4 of them, I believe. So I'm just want to keep going with that for the rest of the year, but definitely my favorite sequel so far this year. All right, question 3, a new release you haven't read yet but want to. This one is Cassandra in Reverse by Holly Smalley? This book looks so cute and totally up my alley. It's about a girl who lives this like very ordinary life. She has everything she wanted, but she really doesn't step outside the box. And apparently one day, everything that she's been working for implodes. I think she loses her relationship, her job, and for somehow in some sort of magical realism type element, she finds that she can rewind her life and get some do-overs. But is she doing over the right things? This book really reminds me of that book Una Out of Order that came out, I think last year or the year before. That was one of my favorite books of the year when I read it. I absolutely love like a life exploration with a little bit of magical realism. These are some of my favorite tropes. So I am so excited to read Cassandra in Reverse. I have it on hold for my library. I think I am number 5, so I should get it really, really, really soon. I cannot wait to read this. Maybe I will do a reading vlog on this or something, because that would be fun to read together. My husband's going out of town next week, actually, for 2 nights. And I was thinking about doing a reading vlog over that, because when he's out of town, all I do is read. I mean, I take care of my daughter, but I also read, like, constantly, because, I mean, why not? I don't have anything else to do. So maybe I will do a reading vlog if I can get my hands on this book by next week. So we will see. All right, question 4, my most anticipated release for the second half of the year. Right now, what I could come up with that I'm most excited about to read that has not been released yet is None of This Is True by Lisa Jewell. This is coming out on July 20th, so next month. It has phenomenal reviews from people who have reviewed it on Goodreads so far. It's got a 4.46. I know that doesn't mean a ton, because when the masses get their hands on it, you know, that'll fluctuate. But I've only read one book from Lisa Jewell from her backlist, and I know she has a huge backlist, so I'm not terribly familiar with her writing. I believe she writes primarily thrillers, which is primarily what I read. So I do have a high bar for thrillers, but this has been getting a lot of hype. I cannot wait to read this. I believe this also encompasses like a podcast element, which I'm super interested in. I like that trope as well. But yeah, cannot wait to check out my second Lisa Jewell book. All right, question 5. What is your biggest disappointment? For this, I have 2 answers. The first one is Someone Else's Shoes by Jojo Moyes. I have historically really enjoyed Jojo Moyes books. I really like her writing style, I like her subject matter, and I've liked a bunch of her stuff. I had such high hopes for this. I loved the concept of like 2 women living very different lives, kind of stepping into each other's shoes, which is what I assumed it would be about. I don't know if it was like the headspace I was in when I was reading this, but essentially the meat of this book was centered around 2 women who are treated like shit from everyone in their lives, especially the character of Sam, who was like the wife and mother, who was just trying to make an honest living when her husband wasn't working. Daughter treated her like crap. Just everyone shat on this woman. Like, she was treated so terribly by her employer, by her husband, by her daughter. And honestly, I hated reading about that. It just made me sad. I will say I loved the ending of this book. So it did get a 2-star instead of a 1-star from me. But I had such high hopes that this would be a slightly different exploration of 2 women kind of figuring out what life is like for another person. And really, it was just, let's bring this sweet lady down and make her feel terrible and treat her like crap for like 400 pages. So that was my first biggest disappointment. My second biggest disappointment was The Long Walk by Stephen King. I did end up giving this one 3 stars. I was so intrigued by the plot. I thought this was a really cool but very simple plot, but ultimately the execution was way off for me. This is like set in some sort of strange dystopian future with a world that looks very similar to ours, but has little strange different nuances in like our government and stuff. But the major plot of this is that there's a lottery every year that teenage boys enter who participate in what's called the Long Walk, and 100 of them get chosen, and essentially they all start on a starting line and they just walk until all of them have literally dropped dead. There are rules with it. If you slow down, if you stop too much, if you fall too far behind, the government will shoot you. An army like following the kids, and they just like shoot you. I mean, I know this is like super morbid, but I was like super intrigued by this. I thought if anyone can take this like very strange, straightforward, like how can you even make this a full book concept and turn it into something awesome, it would be Stephen King. But ultimately it just wasn't very good. To be perfectly honest, I couldn't even tell you what the ending was. I don't really understand it. I actually Googled like the meaning of the ending of The Long Walk. I don't think I got any clarity. I do think this was written several years ago. Like, oh yeah, it was published in 1979. But either way, I really was disappointed by this. I'd really like to make my way through Stephen King's extensive backlist. This one is written under his pseudonym, Richard Bachman, but it is Stephen King. I would like to make my way through the backlist, but that just is so intimidating. I thought this would be a great place to start because this is a fairly short book. I think it's only like 200 pages. I just didn't care for it. I didn't like it. I didn't really understand it. Ultimately, the plot that sounds boring, 100 boys on a walk, is at its core just kind of boring. Not sure why I thought he could make that like thrilling and exciting, but It wasn't. I was disappointed. All right, question number 6 is the biggest surprise so far this year. This one for me was a total wild card. I saw somebody recommend this on like an Instagram story and thought it sounded interesting, so I picked it up. This book was awesome. I ended up giving it 4 stars. It was The School for Good Mothers by Jessamine Chan. I hadn't heard of this author before. I had never heard of this book before, but it was an absolutely wild ride. This is actually another one that's like a dystopian future. Again, very similar to our world. The major differences are that the government is run very differently and they have a lot more control over our parenting and punishment for bad parenting, and it's much more extreme. We're following our main character, a woman named Frida, who has a young daughter who is going through a divorce, and she has what is described as a very bad day. She has a day where she just has a total lapse of judgment on her parenting and does something that's not super great for her daughter. As a result, the government steps in, takes her daughter from her, but offers her the opportunity to gain custody back by participating in what's called the School for Bad Mothers. It involves going away for a year to a boarding school type learning center to essentially learn how to be a good mother. Because we're set in this strange dystopian, like really government run future, you can tell that this is going to go awry, that things aren't exactly what they seem, and that the control that the government kind of is imposing on Frida and the other mothers at this school is really outrageous. I was absolutely blown away by the visceral reaction that I had to this book. As the mother of a young child, I heavily related, first of all, to what the main character was dealing with on her bad day. I obviously didn't agree with what she did, and if you'll read it, you'll know what it is. But I felt myself being really sympathetic to the plights of a new mother with a young child and how difficult that can be. And I had a huge connection and very big feelings about how she was feeling with her desperation in the face of losing her child, and when somebody else is able to gain control of your child and you really lose all autonomy for your own life and relationship with your family and friends and your children and stuff. So this ended up, yeah, was just a total wild card. I gave it 4 stars. I loved it. Please go check this out. It was fantastic. This should absolutely be getting way more hype than I have seen. Again, like I said, I saw it mentioned in like one Instagram story from one person and have not heard about it since. Go check this book out. It was awesome. It's definitely going to be a favorite of the year for me. All right, question number 7 is my favorite new author, debut or new to you? So my answer for this one is a new to me author. This is not a debut author, and that is Grady Hendrix. I read this year How to Sell a Haunted House, and I absolutely loved it. 5 stars. This book blew me away. This was another one. I kind of went in having no expectations. I've never read a Grady Hendrix book before. I have tried to read Horror Store. I got that one out of the library and just like never opened it up. I think I just wasn't in the right mindset. It's a little eclectic if you're familiar with that book. And then I was also supposed to read the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix for my book club like 2 years ago, and I couldn't get into it. I think I made it like 50 pages before I just returned it. So for this one, I again had no expectations, and it was so good. It was so good, you guys. It's a mixture of horror, thriller, and ridiculous humor. It's about a woman whose parents are killed in a car accident, and so she goes back across the country to her childhood home to like clean out the house and settle their affairs. And the house, it turns out, is haunted and also just horrifically creepy because of her mom's collections. I'll leave it at that. If you have any interest in this, if you like Grady Hendrix but haven't picked this one up, absolutely go check it out. It is so good. I can't even talk about it. It was the most wild mixture of horror and funny. I feel like you know a book is good when you just start thinking about it and you're like back in the headspace that you were in when you were first reading it. That's the mark of a good book, in my opinion, and this was definitely an awesome book. I loved it. Loved it. Go check it out. I will definitely be going back and revisiting Grady Hendrix again because this one was just awesome. If the other ones are anything like this, I think he's going to be a new favorite author for me all around. All right, question 8, newest fictional crush. I don't have a lot of fictional crushes because I don't read a ton of like romance or fantasy, which is where I think a lot of people find their crushes. Oh my God, I have a leg spasm. Ow. Okay. So for this one, it's Murderbot from the Murderbot Diaries. I know that sounds ridiculous. He is a homicidal robot. But I loved him. I think he's funny. He's very insightful. I love how Martha Wells has written this character. I love these books so much. So my new fictional crush is Murderbot from the Murderbot Diaries. He doesn't have a name. He's just Murderbot. I think at one point in one of the books, somebody decides to call him something, but he does not identify with a name. He just goes by Murderbot. So, all right, question number 9 is newest favorite character. And for this, it is 2. They're from the same book, and that is Ryland Grace and Rocky from Project Hail Mary. These characters are so wonderful. I loved them. I did not want to leave this world. I just love the way Andy Weir writes his characters. Before this, I would have said probably my favorite fictional character of all time was Mark Watney from The Martian, also by Andy Weir, but I loved these two as well. I'm obsessed with their relationship. I'm obsessed with this bizarre friendship, brotherhood between a human and an 8-legged species from outer space. The way Andy Weir allowed them to communicate was so bizarre and so unrealistic, but I'm telling you, I barely questioned it. They communicate essentially, obviously we as humans, we speak. Rocky, who is the alien, communicates via like musical tones, and it takes Ryland like a day and a half to like fluently speak in musical tone language and for them to understand each other. It totally doesn't even make sense. It doesn't make sense that they would be able to communicate this way so quickly. Obviously, for the sake of the story, we needed that to happen, but I'm telling you, in the moment, I didn't even question it. I was like, obviously Ryland Grace can like hear musical tones and understand what he's saying. That totally tracks. I get it. Because I was so immersed in the story and just like believed and loved this relationship so much. Nothing could surprise me. So yeah, they are my 2 new favorite. All right, question number 10. A book that made me cry. This was another 5-star read for me, you guys. I've actually had such a good reading year so far. I don't even think I mentioned it. I've read 40 books so far this year. I'm like blowing my goal out of the water. I think my goal for this year was 65 by the end of the year, so I'm something like 8 or 9 books ahead of schedule. Last year at this time when I did this video, I think I was only at like 33, so I'm doing really well. But I've had like such a great reading year. This was another 5-star book for me. And the book that made me cry was Remarkably Bright Creatures by Shelby Van Pelt. I feel like anybody watching this is going to have read this because I think everyone's read this book. I think I'm a little late to the game on this one. I've seen it around for a while and I've seen it talked about a lot. But this book is perfect from start to finish. I had absolutely no complaints about this book. I did have a small complaint. But I can't talk about it without giving away the story. But it was just something very small at the very end. Very microscopic, very small. Still 5 stars, but perfect cover to cover. We are following the story of a woman named Tova who went to work at an aquarium overnights doing maintenance after her son disappeared and her husband passed away. And she strikes up this bizarre but beautiful relationship with this like really grouchy octopus who's like very old apparently in octopus years. So her and this octopus kind of strike up this strange little friendship, and we do get the point of view from the octopus, and it's so funny and so sweet. I love the characterization of this character and how his thoughts and his feelings and emotions were written. We only get a few snippets from his point of view, but all of them were awesome. And he basically decides that he's going to try to cross the human-animal communication barrier to try to help her figure out what happened to her missing son. And it's just so sweet. And there are a few other characters. There's some periphery characters. We get another POV in there of somebody that's like in the area visiting that's kind of related to all of this, but you don't really know how. And it was a beautiful story. It was an absolutely beautiful story. It's a beautiful book. So heartwarming, so lovely. These characters were wonderful. This was another book where you just didn't want to leave the characters. Absolutely made me cry at the end. Yeah, just a beautiful story. Wish I could go back and reread it for the first time again and just feel those feelings again. If on the off chance you haven't looked this up or checked it out, please go do it. This book absolutely deserves all the hype. It is so lovely. You deserve to read it. You deserve to do this for yourself. Just go read it. It's awesome. All right, question number 11, a book that made you happy. This was kind of another wild card. I don't even remember where I heard about this book, and I don't know that I've heard a lot about it since, but that is The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches by Sangu Mandana. I think that's how you pronounce that. This is just the sweetest little story. We're following our main character. I believe her name is pronounced Mika. It's M-I-K-A, so it's Micah or Mika, and she is a witch, and she's living in the UK, and there are not a lot of witches around, and they stay very, very secretive. They don't want people to know about their magic. They don't want to be exposed for their magic. They basically just keep a very low profile. And Micah gets a letter one day asking her to come to this very remote estate in the countryside to help teach and raise 3 young witches that are essentially unaccounted for in the Society of Witches. Nobody knows they exist. The people that run this estate have been trying to keep it under wraps because these little girls are very special. So Micah goes, she gets to know the other people living at the home, the caretaker, I think the groundskeeper, the housekeeper, all this stuff. They have this like beautiful little family, and she just gets to know them, and there's a little bit of like a fun conflict in there, but nothing crazy, and it's just sweet. It's got heavy themes of like found family. There is a romance element to it. It's just a very sweet story. This one is so cute. Definitely pick it up if it's on your list, or add it to your list if it is not. All right, question 12. The most beautiful book you've bought or received so far this year. So kind of like 2022, I have not really bought any books this year. I could only think of 3. I do believe I did buy one more, but I cannot remember what it is. So as far as I know, I have only bought 3 books this year. And again, just like last year, my most beautiful book of the year is the summer release from Ellen Hildebrand, and that is The 5-Star Weekend. I've already read it. I finished it. It was a 4-star for me. I love her stuff. I've said it a dozen times. I will read anything she writes. I love them. They're escapist, they're summery, they're very easy to read. Are they groundbreaking? Absolutely not. Are they always a perfect story? Absolutely not. Are there a few holes in this one especially? Yes. But they're so escapist. They're easy beach reads. The characters are fun. The stories are really well fleshed out, and she has changed up her writing style in these last few books, and I really, really like it. Instead of a straightforward narrative, we get some flashbacks, we get some alternate POVs here and there, and they're just great. They're just awesome books. If you're looking for something easy, escapist, set on a beach, they're always on Nantucket. I think I said last year on that cover that I would love to be sipping the mojito that the main character is drinking. This one has a glass of champagne. I don't discriminate. A glass of champagne on a boat in Nantucket sounds lovely right now. In fact, I have convinced my husband that we should actually go to Nantucket next summer for a week for a family vacation. So I think we're going to try to do that. I am done reading about Nantucket. I'm going to Nantucket. I will see it for myself. But yeah, I think this is so beautiful. I mean, what's not beautiful about that? Who doesn't want to be there? And then question 13, what books do you need to read by the end of the year? I mean, what's a good answer for this? You want to read what you can from your TBR, right? So I went through my TBR and picked out 3 books that have either been on there for a minute, that I own in person, or something that I'm really excited to get to. So I picked out 3. The first one is Tomorrow, Tomorrow, and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. My best friend gave this to me as a birthday gift last year in November, and I have not read it yet. And I think that's because she read it and didn't care for it, and then our other good friend read it and really liked it. So I know that we've got 2 sides of the scale, so I'm kind of going to be the tiebreaker here. So I do own it, I have it, I just, with mixed reviews, it keeps me from picking it up. If it was overwhelming love for it, I definitely would have gotten to it so far, but I really want to get to this. I know it's been very popular on BookTube and BookTok and Bookstagram and all that stuff, so I want to get into it and finally give my opinion and see what that is. The second one I really want to get to by the end of the year is This Time Tomorrow by Emma Straub. This I took out from the library and started, and I'm certainly a mood reader, and the subject matter in the moment was a little heavy, so I ended up just returning it. But the plot of this sounds right up my alley. I believe it's about a woman, if I'm remembering correctly, a woman whose father is dying, and she wakes up one day like 10 years in the past or something, 20 years in the past, and she basically gets a redo of her entire life with her father. That's totally up my alley. I mean, I love the idea of redos, obviously, with Cassandra in reverse or Una out of order. Like, I love stuff like that, like stories of life with a little touch of magical realism in that way. So I'm really, really, really want to get to this by the end of the year. It just sounds very sad to explore the relationship between a woman and her father and the regrets she may have and things like that. So it's a heavier subject matter. I do want to make time to get into this sometime by the end of the year because I think I'm really, really going to love it. And then the third book that I really want to get to by the end of the year is a new release. I think it just came out this month actually, and that is The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston. I read The Dead Romantics by her this year and I loved it. He's another, like, I think I gave that one 4 stars. Loved that book. I am not a big romance person, but this was like a sweet romance, again, with like a touch of magical realism. And it sounds like The 7-Year Slip is the same. I believe it's about a woman who moves into an apartment and meets like this wonderful man, the man of her dreams, but it turns out that there has been a slip in time, and he is living in the apartment 7 years prior to her living in the apartment, but they're sort of like in there together. So I don't quite know how, what the details of how these two people are going to be able to interact, but I just love concepts like this. And even though I don't read a lot of romance, if there's a romance that throws something like that in there, I am all for it. So I cannot wait to read this. I'm also on the list for this at the library. I think I'm getting it pretty soon, but that is the third one that I really, really want to get to this year that I need to make a priority to get to. So Tomorrow, Tomorrow, and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin, This Time Tomorrow by Emma Straub, and The 7 Year Slip by Ashley Poston. The three that I really want to get to by the end of the year, along with the other 357 books on my TBR, of course. You're right. All right, guys, that is it. That is 2023's mid-year book freakout tag. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I am so sorry for being so absent. Please give me a comment down below on your answers to these questions. Have you read any of these? What do you think? Do you agree with what I like? Do you disagree? Let's have a conversation about it. You know, that's all I'm trying to do on here is meet people and talk about books. Again, thanks for tuning in, even after my long absence. I'm sorry about that. I'm gonna try to be better. I've just been very distracted the last 6 months with life and other things, and have not really had the motivation and gusto to set up and film. But I'm trying to convince myself that it doesn't have to be quite as formal as this all the time. A vlog is fine. A vlog is great even. I love watching reading vlogs, so why would I think people wouldn't want to watch that from me? I don't know, but I think I might try to get back into posting more vlogs because it's just easier content on the go to film than it is to get quiet time with an almost 4-year-old sitting down at a desk. I have all these notes in front, you know, the time to do the notes, the whole thing, the planning and whatnot. Maybe a vlog, it just works with my lifestyle better. So I have to give that a shot and see if that is the case. But in any event, I am going to try to come back a little bit more often here. Thank you guys for sticking it out with me. I really, really appreciate it. Please send me your mid-year book freakout tag videos. These are my favorite videos of the year to watch. I love making it, and I hope you guys enjoyed. Have an awesome day. I will talk to you guys soon. Bye.